Hello, it's John Virgo here. This is a request for Snooker Loopy, which was a matchroom thing with Steve Davis and Dennis Taylor and Willie Thorne. Not my song. Mine was from Big Break. It's only a game. But you've asked me to do it, so I'll do it. It's Snooker Loopy, not so we. Me and him and them and me. Great lines. We'll show you what to do with a load of balls and a snooker cue. Pot the reds and screw back for the yellow, green, brown, blue, pink or black. Snooker Loopy, nuts are we. We're all snooker loopy. A well done to Chaz and Dave. Where's the cue ball going? Cheers.
Good evening, Europe, and welcome to this special snooker edition of Eurovision. We've got all your favourites. We've got Ben Mertens with his song The Golden Boy Wonder. We've got Lucas Kleckers with Always on the Run Through. And Ken Doherty with Pot the Doomsday Blue. But before that, we've got everyone's favourite. And this is Joe Hannard, or as you'll know him, the Hurricane, with his hit single, Snooker Loopy.
Well, a very good evening, Hazel. And good evening, everybody at home. Snooker Loopy, nuts are we, me and him and them and me. There you go. And that's a douze pois for La Dennis Taylor.
It's going to be hosted in Dennis Taylor's front room next year. I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm sure a lot of people would tune in for that. But it has been a little while, Tom, since we've spoken, considering we'd spoken every single day of the World Snooker Championship. We're back now, after a week since our first episode on the new Snooker Loopy podcast channel. And I have to say, Tom, I don't know about you, but I was absolutely blown away by how many people were getting involved over on the new channel and giving it a listen, giving it a subscribe, and we're getting towards 100 subscribers on there now, which is fantastic. So thank you for all the support from people at home.
Yeah, I was delighted with it because I was genuinely expecting us to move channel and there to be a bit of a dip in the view count. I thought we'd maybe lose a few people and maybe we'd be going, it's got 50 views, that's fine. But actually, if anything, the view count was probably a little bit higher, which kind of is really great and amazing. And we've got so many people in the comments joining in. We've still got people asking us, when's the Q School episode coming? It's coming next week. Don't worry, it's on the way. You'll get your Q School preview. It's coming. But before that,
yeah, Joe, I didn't get those emails, Tom, so I don't know where you got those emails.
I get people bothering me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Like, we've set up a Snooker Loopy podcast email, but still they go, no, I want to ask Tom when's the next episode. And I'm happy to tell you, next week, Q School preview. But today, Joe, it's our review of the whole season, the whole thing.
Yeah, 2023-24, and I think our first full season of doing this podcast, we obviously, did some little bits. We had the Crucible chats, didn't we, back in the day, and then started it towards the back end of last season. But, we've reviewed a fair few of these tournaments. I did notice one of the comments on the podcast was, I hope you cover all tournaments this season. I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about pretty much every tournament. Maybe not in the depth that we did the World Championship, but I think we'd probably die from starvation or something if we just did daily podcasts of every tournament. But it's been a very interesting season. I think in certain aspects, some surprise winners of tournaments, but then in other aspects, very expected winners of tournaments. So it brought together an interesting mix of winners and losers this season, I think.
Yes, and of course, two players many people thought dominated. Ronnie and Trump, obviously. Gary Wilson also picked up a couple of ranking titles, had a very good year. Zhang Anda kind of came out of nowhere and has become a serious competitor. But another thing that I almost feel like we forget, because it feels like it was so long ago, is the fact that this season was the season where we lost a number of players because they were banned. Like, they were banned in January of last year, but it was this season where they dropped off the rankings. And, I mean, what a seismic effect that had on sport, because everyone's going, Higgins is still top 16, but he probably wouldn't still be top 16 if we had Bingtao and Jingtong on tour.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. I think Jingtong especially would definitely be above Higgins just because of his previous successes. But yeah, good point. I've not thought about that, and nobody else has said that. So, that's what you get.
They've completely forgotten them. It's crazy.
That's what you get round here. You get niche comments like that. But it all started back in July, didn't it, with Sean Murphy winning the first tournament of the season, and he continued his good end to last season, winning the Championship League at the Leicester Arena in Leicester, of all places.
Do you have many memories of that tournament, Joe?
You know what, Tom? I always say the Championship League is not an interesting tournament at all to me, but what's really weird is that it replaced the Premier League snooker, and I actually think the Premier League snooker was a great concept, and I think they should bring it back 100%. You know, they have the Premier League darts, and that makes, you know, BBC Sport headlines pretty much every time it's on. So I don't really know why snooker got rid of it. I think it was a good concept, and it certainly had Sky Sports behind it as well, which I think has its own merits for snooker. But
I think
are you a fan of the Championship League?
I think the league format is interesting. I like it as a format. I like the fact it's a bit different from straight knockouts. But I do agree with you that the Premier League felt like it was basically effectively the Masters in league format, and you'd have all the biggest players playing each other, and you know, Ronnie would enter, Judd would enter, Bingham, all these people, they'd be wanting to win it. It'd be a big prize. And then they replaced it with the Championship League, and I mean, considering how prestigious the Championship League is in football, you look at the snooker version, and it's probably
is the Championship, or is it the Champions League? You know, maybe if they called it the Champions League snooker, then maybe it would get a little bit more traction. But it's literally called the Championship League. It's as if it's been downgraded from the Premier League.
It reminds me of, you know how in football there's League Two, and then the league below that is called the National League. Which I think if you didn't know football, you'd think, oh, National League, that must be the top division. I think it's a bit like that, where it's just a misleading name to try and give it prestige that it frankly hasn't got, because it's just really short of formats. There's not crazy prize money on show. Most of the top
it's
players,
ridiculous,
like Ronnie. Oh my God, I've just remembered this. Ronnie, in not in the Sean Murphy edition, but in the edition that was in 2024, he entered the Championship League.
the non-ranking event version, I think,
He played the first day and then dropped out. He didn't even bother with the second day.
Yeah. And he had that phase last year, Ronnie. I don't know if you remember, but he just kept farting in matches. And I feel like he reserved a lot of that for the Championship League. So,
you saying it was a protest?
It was a dirty protest, yeah. But not the most exciting way to start the season. But the next tournament, the first proper event of the season, was the European Masters, which I don't think is returning to the calendar next season. But we had a return winner. Barry Hawkins got off to a great start to the season, winning 9-6 against Judd Trump. And it was great to see him back to some good form, wasn't it?
Yeah, I love Barry Hawkins. He's always one of those players who, it does feel, you know, he's good enough to really be challenging for most titles, but for whatever reason, he's not quite got the consistency. He's... You know, a lot of people sort of compared him to Bingham as like the two players who, when Barry Hearn took over, really upped their game and found form because there was more tournaments, they got more consistent. But he's not ever really reached. Well, he almost reached the level of Bingham. He got to 2 World Finals, but he was just quite unlucky, really. You know, with his opponent both times. Yeah, could have been a very different story for Barry Hawkins, because a very, very good player, and I guess almost an essence of, you know, not a nearly man, but he's definitely someone who you do think in another era you would be a top 3 player, but he's just unlucky that he's in this era where there's so many players who've stuck around and aren't going away.
Yeah, and I think perhaps he's suffered from not having the conviction at the biggest moments to go on and take those opportunities. You know, there's been a couple of times where he's been in the semi-final of a World Championship, and perhaps, you know, had he got through, would have been the favourite in the final, and, you know, he's never quite taken his opportunity, unfortunately. But I agree with you, you know, he probably would have had one or two world titles in a different era. Very good break builder, but good to see him back in the winners' enclosure, because a little bit like Bingham and Robertson this season, he'd been somebody that had dropped out of the top 16. He'd been somebody that had been out of the winning picture for a while, and people were questioning whether will he ever get back there. So it was good to see him back, and he certainly was a contender in most of the tournaments at the start of the season. But yeah, so he won that one. Then we went on to the Shanghai Masters, the first invitational event of the season, and of course the first event that Ronnie had played in the season. And interestingly, I'd forgotten about this, but he beat Luca Bracel in the final of that. And yeah, Luca Bracel, I mean, we think he had an awful season, but actually in invitational events, he got to the final of the Shanghai Masters and of course won the World Mixed Doubles later on in the season as well.
He also did well in the Riyadh Masters, I believe. So,
yeah.
Was it the final in the Riyadh
Masters? I think he got the final of that, yeah.
He played very well in all the events that didn't have ranking points, which it's that strange one, really, where, you know, in terms of ranking points, he'd be all the way down here, but in terms of prize money, he's probably pretty high up.
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Because he was also in the Champion of Champions, all these things.
Yeah.
The Masters, you get a lot of money for turning up. So he actually had a decent year in terms of prize money, and who knows, maybe his season could have been very different if he'd won that title. It could have been completely different.
Who knows, yeah, because I think once you win your first title as a world champion, then that sort of proves it wasn't a fluke. And I think that's, you know, where some players have fell down in the past, and it remains to be seen whether Kyron will feel the same thing. But I think so many players like Graham Dott or
Graham Dott,
or even Stuart Bingham. I know Bingham went on to win the Masters, but
Bingham doesn't work as well.
But I don't think he won many ranking events after the World Championship. And it's one of those things that once you were a world champion, I think for a lot of players, it's right, I've achieved my life goal now. And that's what separates those players from the Ronnies, the Higgins, the Selbys, the Mark Williams, who constantly want to win and want to break records. I think there's a different attitude, I think, there from those players. But, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about it. But speaking about returning to the winning enclosure, the British Open, Mark Williams beat Mark Selby 10-7 in the final there, so good to see him back to form. And then we had 3 tournaments in a row won by Judd Trump. He was in a bit of a purple patch in the English Open, Wuhan Open, and the Northern Ireland Open. And actually, he'd started the Home Nations series with 2 victories. And I don't know if you remember, but when they first brought out the Home Nations, they were going to have a £1 million bonus for anybody that won all 4. I don't think that's a thing anymore, but Judd Trump certainly started off as if he thought it was still a thing.
Yeah, his form in that part of the season was amazing. Like, I think he was the first player to win 3 in a row in terms of ranking titles, probably since Hendry or something. I'm sure it was some sort of stat like that. And he was
on a 27-match winning run or something silly like that, wasn't he?
But, you know, I mean, people would maybe argue he found his form too early in the season. We did say that before the World Championships. I think there could be an argument for that, because he was, you know, very, very good then, very good at grinding out wins, also knocking in a decent amount of centuries. For a while, people thought he was going to break his record break Robertson's record of most centuries in a season, but he just slowed down in the second kind of half of the season. So maybe he started too early. He was, you know, trying to push on, trying to get that number 1 ranking, and possibly when he started talking about it publicly, because he started going like, I want to be number 1, I want to beat Ronnie, blah, blah, blah. And maybe it feels like whenever he starts talking about that, that's him articulating that he's feeling the pressure.
Mm.
Because after he says that, suddenly he stops winning, and you just go, "Just keep your mouth shut, mate, and you'll probably win the World Championship if you just shut up."
Yeah. And I've seen an interview with him before the World Championship on Stephen Hendry's channel, and he'd said Stephen Hendry said, "Oh, I'm sure you'd trade in your 6 tournament victories this season for the World Championship," and he just went, "Well, no, I'd take 6 victories over the World Championship any day." And I think that is the difference between Judd Trump and a lot of other players. And it doesn't help his image, I don't think, of being somebody that isn't legitimately breaking records. Eventually he's probably going to move past Ronnie's ranking titles record, but he's never ever going to get close to his Triple Crown record, and I think that's very telling of the standard of tournaments that he's winning generally for Judd Trump.
I mean, there's all these silly records that they will change, and it does depend. Obviously now we have so many more ranking titles. Like, obviously, when Hendry won 3 in a row, I think there was about eight tournaments a season, 8 ranking titles. That was it. And there's so many records that will go, like the £1 million prize money. Judd was the first to do it. Ronnie beat his record this season. But as soon as we have Saudi Arabian events every season, then odds are there could be someone who earns £1 million from one tournament. It doesn't mean they had a better season than Judd did or Ronnie did, but it's all those records will probably fall. But it doesn't mean you've had a better career. It just means the times are changing. Like, it's like when some people try and compare the prize money won by Steve Davis and the prize money won by Ronnie O'Sullivan, but you go, yeah, but it's completely different eras. Like, probably some of Steve Davis's World Championships he got about 50 grand for, whereas now you get 500 grand. You can't really always compare them, and I think Judd's ranking titles are similar in that it's like you've got the numbers, but I mean, like Gibraltar Open, mate, or Riga Masters, or these tournaments, they're not the ones that should be held up as prestigious as the World Championship or as the UK Championship, or even as, frankly, the Players Championship, the Tour Championship, and that series of events. I'd put them above a lot of these ranking titles.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before on the podcast, but I think it's definitely time now to make a tiered system of ranking events, and that be a little bit like tennis, where you've got the Grand Slams, you've got the Masters 1000 events, then you've got the 500s, then you've got the 250s, and it just standardizes it of being, right, your majors, your Triple Crown series, if you want, those can be your 3 Grand Slams of snooker, if you like, and then you have a tier underneath that where you've got the Tour Championship, the Players Championship, International Championship, China Open, all of those sort of events could be on that level. And then your little small tournaments like the Shootout or the Riga Masters or Paul Hunter Classic, they can be in a small tier where, because nobody's really talks about the records of how many titles Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal have won. They talk about the number of Grand Slams they've won. And what's crazy is that Judd Trump, I think, has won 4. He's won 4 Grand Slams, if you like, and Ronnie's won 23. So, the gulf between those two, but on ranking titles, I think they're only separated by 13 or something like that. So that's for me, I think that's where snooker needs to go. And then you can keep people like Steve Davis and Stephen Hendry in the picture a lot more for greatest of all time debates, in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts on it, and I think you could also standardise the ranking system by doing that, by assigning the same number of ranking points to certain events of the same tier. You could even give ranking points to some of the invitational events if you really want to. But then that's
I do think it's mad that there's events where you can earn 500 grand and not get a single ranking point. That does seem bizarre to me.
Yeah. It is bizarre, but then you make I guess in that sense you make the top 16 even stronger by giving them more ranking points for being in the Masters, for instance. But I'm sure there's ways around it. But that was Judd Trump's purple patch. But then the emergence of a new superstar from China in the International Championship. Until last season, had never been inside the top 64. And all of a sudden, he'd got to the final of the English Open a couple of weeks beforehand. Perhaps we thought maybe that's just a bit of a fluke run. But at the start of November, Zhang Ande becomes a ranking event winner. I don't think anybody would have predicted that at the start of the season.
No one did. Most people would have thought, okay, good, he's got in the top 64, so maybe he'll push on and maybe end the season about 50. Maybe he'll, fill a bit of that gap of players who've dropped out or are getting older, all that stuff, and maybe he'll rise up a bit. But I mean, multiple ranking finalist and ranking event winner is not anything I think anyone really predicted for Zhang Ande ever, even never mind this season. But for him to do it, he just found this amazing, incredible form, and even he said he doesn't know where it's come from. So I want to just follow him around and go, why are you so good? What have you done differently now that's made you into a superstar? Because if even you don't know, that means Joe can do it. We can get Joe to win a ranking title, and we'll just go, we don't know how anyone could do it. It feels like when someone says that, because you're like, but you're not even working harder, you're not even trying a new technique, you've not got this magical cue from Hogwarts. For whatever reason, you're playing much better, and no one knows why.
Yeah. It's bizarre, isn't it, where that comes from, and we've seen it a little bit over the past couple of years. I think Rob Milkins maybe that was a big surprise last season, but not to the same level of what Zhang Ande has produced. And Jordan Brown, of course, won from 85 in the rankings or whatever it was. Fan Zhengyi did that as well. But that was very much a one-hit wonder. Zhang Ande has consistently been at the business end of tournaments this season, so there is a significant shift in what's happening in his game. So fair play to Zhang, and obviously beat Tom Ford in the final, who would have had his first ranked event title as well. He's had a great season, got into the top 16, so good to see some new names. I think people were getting a little bit concerned by the fact that Judd Trump had won 3 in a row. Oh, is somebody just going to dominate the season? And then it was great to have two players that have never won a ranking event face off against each other in a big final in the International Championship. Big prize money on offer there.
Yeah, well, they both beat good players. I think Ande beat Ronnie O'Sullivan in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals. So they both played really well to get there. It wasn't like they had an easy run, and I mean, it was nice to see following that result. They both backed it up. They both had the best seasons of their career, like both of them. Like Zhang's been a pro about 10 years, Tom Ford probably closer to 20, and both of them had the best seasons of their career. Both climbed in the top 16 for the first time. I think Tom Ford was very unlucky to miss the Masters. He missed it by about £500 or something stupid, and he just goes, I'm a bit gutted for you, but hopefully he'll be there next season. But it's always a good story, I think, when new people reach a final and new people get their hands on the trophy, because as much as we all have our favourites to win, and it's nice to see the big names extend these records, it's always really nice to have those stories of players who've worked at the game, not just as a professional, but they've worked at snooker for 20 years since they were kids, and they've finally done what they're dreaming of. And it's lovely to see that both those two players are backing it up, and hopefully will be in the top 16 for a few years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. But then I think the proper snooker season starts. For me, when Champion of Champions comes around, that's when the real snooker season starts for me. And you've got some massive events. You've got the Champion of Champions, UK Championship, the Shootout, Masters, World Grand Prix, German Masters, Welsh Open, Players Championship. You've just got big event after big event and historic events, one after the other. But that all started with the Champion of Champions. And I don't know if you remember, Tom, but it all started with a bit of controversy. Can you remember why it was a bit controversial?
I mean, was it because they had those weird jerseys with their names on the back?
Well, that's one thing, but there's something else.
Was it because it was at the Tough Sheet Community Centre or whatever it was?
No, sorry, Tom. It was because Ronnie O'Sullivan, defending champion, withdrew on the week of the event, citing mental and physical health reasons. He was, of course, replaced by Ding Junhui in the draw, but that was a big story because people were starting to think, right, is Ronnie just taking the mick this season, which he'd only played in a couple of events up to that point. I think the Shanghai Masters and the International Championship. I don't know if he played in the English Open. But
I know he entered the Scottish Open and withdrew the day before. Because there was, again, controversy because he was going to play a young player, Liam Graham, and Liam Graham was very excited about it, and Ronnie dropped out, so Liam got a bye, but he was like, but I'd rather play Ronnie. So well, it was...
Yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? But, Champion of Champions, obviously Mark Allen won that one. He returned to form and beat Judd Trump in the final, and it was quite a thrashing, 10-3 in that final.
I enjoyed that final, mate. I loved it.
Considering Trump had won 3 events already this season, that was a very good victory for Mark Allen, I think.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, because Mark Allen, I mean, he's interesting because obviously he's world number 1 now. But apart from that tournament, I can't remember any other tournament where he looked like a world number 1. I feel like he's world number 1 off the back of a very good season the year before. And he might not stay there for very long unless he needs to start this new season with a bang. Otherwise, he's going to have, a couple of months at number 1 and then be overtaken by Trump. Yeah,
I mean, I'm trying to find the end of season rankings for next season, but unfortunately they're not up there yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Allen would be close to dropping out of the top 16 next season if we take off all the points and assume he doesn't win a match this season. He'd be close to dropping out the top 16, I would have thought.
Let's have a look at his season points. I mean, that's a big assumption, assuming that he won't win a match. No, actually, no, he's 6th on the 1 year list.
Okay.
He won the Players Championship?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
So I mean, that's the only sort of big title he won, but that's going to keep him in there for next year probably.
It was a bit of a disappointing season, though, I think for Mark Allen on the whole, after being such a contender the previous year, but he entered as world number 1, so there's something to be said about that. But then we had the first BBC event of the season, the UK Championship, and famously I backed Anthony McGill to beat Ronnie O'Sullivan in the first round, I believe. And
Joe, can you use its full name, please? The
Mr. Q UK Championship. Mr. Q Bingo UK Championship at the York Barbican in York. And Ronnie O'Sullivan won, and that ended a bit of a drought of non-World Championship Triple Crown events. I think the last one he'd won was maybe 2018 UK Championship, I think, something like that. So fair play to Ronnie, beat Ding in the final 10-7, and I remember it went 7-7. It was very, very close, and then Ronnie just motored on, and he seemed to do that a hell of a lot throughout the season. But that was a big tournament for Ronnie to win, I think, and really sort of started people thinking, wow, could Ronnie win an 8th world title this season? And it was good to see Ronnie back winning the big events for me.
Yeah, and he won it confidently, really. He didn't really struggle for most of the tournament. And there was a lot made after it that he won the title in 93, and now 30 years later he won it again. So there was a nice bit of symmetry there, and just showed how long he's been at the top, really, because, I mean, that's never going to get beaten, is it? Like, someone winning the Triple Crown title and then 30 years again winning that same title. I can't see anyone.
Yeah.
Like, for Kyron to do that with the World Championship, he'd have to win the World Championship in, 2054? Like,
Yeah.
Can anyone see that? Comment below if you can see that happening. I'd love to know if anyone thinks that will happen, but he'd be 60 odd.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I mean, Ronnie, Ronnie's had great longevity, hasn't he? And it was good to see. And obviously started talk of, can he complete the Triple Crown as well? Obviously we'd see at the Masters. But the next event was the Shootout, again won by Mark Allen. But can you remember the bit of magic that did happen at the Shootout this year?
I could remember, I believe you're talking about Sean Murphy's incredible 147.
Yeah.
Just quickly, Joe, I'm just going to... Wow, okay, so Mark Allen is currently 54,000 points ahead of Judd Trump. Okay, so he would have been... Well, that's a bit of a relief for snooker purists. I mean, I wouldn't mind it massively, but as it stands, he would be about 4,000 points ahead of Judd Trump without the Shootout. I was thinking, was it the Shootout that got him the world number one? Can you imagine how angry some people would be if it was the Shootout that made him claim the number one position?
It would probably be the same people that are annoyed by Jimmy White and Ken Doherty and Stephen Hendry getting wild cards for the tour. That would be annoyed about that.
I'm absolutely fine with two of them, mate. Absolutely fine.
And you'll be happy with the other one if they make us a memo for Snooker Loopy.
Or if he just gets his cue out and plays.
Well, yeah.
We're not asking for much. I just want him to play. It would just feels silly for
Come
him
and
not
play
to.
with us, Stephen. Come and play with us.
Come and play with us and sing a song, please, Stephen.
But yeah, Shootout. Of course, Sean Murphy's 147. Absolutely unbelievable. And I remember I was at work, obviously when it happened, and I'd seen Sean Murphy had made a 147 at the Shootout, and I was thinking that must have went close to beating Ronnie's record then, if he's managed to do that. Which I think puts into perspective how flippin' fast Ronnie O'Sullivan's 147 was in 97, because actually it was nowhere near. It was 6 or 7 minutes was Murphy's 147. But I mean, I think this phrase is thrown around a lot, but do you think it is something that we'll just never see again in the Shootout?
Possibly. I mean, I'm trying to work it out, because the Shootout's been an event for, is it 13 years? And this is the first one. So, I mean, there's every chance we won't see it again, because you need so much luck. And frankly, in the Shootout, you don't have the top players all entering.
Yeah, true.
So, statistically, there's less players who are likely to even make a 147 if they had the perfect chance and as much time as they wanted. So to have a player who's able to do it in that time limit, and not mess up on the shot clock, not mess up on any single pot, and keep your head straight and deal with that pressure and the crowd, and completely different from any other 147. There's no silence, there's people sort of making noise throughout, and you would feel a different pressure. So I genuinely, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say it will never happen again, because I feel like before it happened, we'd go, it will never happen. And then it happens and you look silly. But I would say I wouldn't bet on it happening again in the next 10 years. I don't think it's likely that it's going to be a regular thing, because, I mean, centuries are rare enough in the Shootout. That's the reality of the format. That, it's very rare that a player might get more than 2 centuries in the tournament. So, realistically, it could be the only one. Unless Ronnie decides to enter and just go for a 147 every time.
Which I wouldn't put it past him to do that. But do you know, a bit of trivia here, Do you know what that previous highest break of the shootout was before Murphy's Maximum?
Oh, Murphy's Maximum. It's got a nice little alliteration.
Murphy's Magic Maximum.
It should be the name of, like, he should get that tattooed on his bum.
I don't want to see that.
Oh, you do, mate. Yes, you do. Come on, that would be the thumbnail for the podcast.
That'd be the thumbnail for his POC quiz attempt.
Right, so the highest... I think... I know Chris Wakelin made a century in the final, and he did, the first one to do that. I think, I don't know, did maybe Tep Chai get like a 1-3-5 or something? Very close.
He got a 1-4-2, and I think it was to win the title. I think, but yeah, I think that's what it was anyway. But yeah, very, very, very interesting shootout. Obviously, Mark Allen, the first top 16 player to win the shootout, and of course was the top seed going into it. So yeah, perfect victory for him there, you would have to say. And speaking, go on.
The big highlight of the shootout was, of course, the introduction.
Oh God, I forgot about this.
Of the Lincolnshire sausage, Stephen
The
Hallworth.
Lincolnshire sausage.
Go on, sausage.
Go on, sausage. Yeah, oh my God, I forgot about it. But people were blaming us, genuinely, for people that are new to the podcast. We had a podcast, must have been about a year ago, where we were talking about different snooker nicknames, and we'd seen that Stephen Hallworth was called the Lincolnshire sausage, and it started a whole trend of us changing people's Wikipedias to be like the Space sausage, the Tyneside sausage, the Wessexshire sausage, all of that. And people were genuinely messaging us on Twitter saying, "Oh my God, Phil Seymour has stolen your nickname for Stephen Hallworth." It wasn't us. And that's why we're very excited to have Stephen on the podcast at some point to explain where that nickname came from, because it weren't us.
We're going to try and talk to him, hopefully after a successful Q School. We're hoping he'll get back on tour, and then we can chat to him once he's done with that, and we can talk to him once again as a pro, the only professional sausage on the tour, which I think would be quite impressive record to have. And I'd love to know where it came from, because we just saw it on Wikipedia, and clearly, I don't know whether he saw it on Wikipedia and liked it, or whether maybe he put it on there himself.
Ooh, maybe he did. Maybe he did. But yeah, that was a big highlight. I forgot all about that, Tom. Cracker.
And Dominic Dale sang about 5 songs as he got all the way to the semi-final. And every time the Eurosport team bullied him into singing.
Well, wasn't Hallworth in the other semi-final? It was, so we could have had a Snooker Loopy sausage final, couldn't we, for the shootout?
We were definitely rooting for a big sausage final. That would have been my favourite final.
Instead of crossing queues, they would have been crossing sausages, wouldn't they?
The space sausage.
The space sausage. Dominic Dale. But anyway, moving on from the shootout, Tom. It's not a shootout review, this. We were talking before about one-hit wonders.
Joe, that we've spent the most time talking about the shootout.
I know, for God's sake. But we talked a little bit earlier about one-hit wonders, and one of those people you might have thought was Gary Wilson after his triumph at the Scottish Open in 2022. I don't think he did particularly well after that, and people thought he's not going to win another ranking event. But he only goes and defends his Scottish Open title, beating Noppon Sangham in the final. Unbelievable. I think that's one of the stories of the season for me.
Yeah, I can't think of too many examples of that ever happening before, of someone winning their first ever ranking title and then not doing much. Obviously getting into the top 16, but not really challenging at the later rounds of tournaments. But then defending that very same title. I mean, he just must love Scotland. There must be something about it. I mean, it's not too far, I suppose, from Tyneside, where he of course, is famously from. Maybe he just it's relatively local, I suppose, Scotland. Maybe he just likes it. Maybe
relatively local. It's about 2.5 hours from Newcastle to Edinburgh.
It's somewhere up north, mate. Do you know what I mean? Basically the same thing.
These bloody southerners.
We need a Tyneside Open. That's what we need, mate.
Yeah, well, they used to play snooker in Newcastle. They did used to have an event there.
Do you think you'd get a wild card?
No.
Well.
Elliot Slesser might, though. But
what,
yeah,
has he dropped off tour for no reason.
Yeah, he has. He's been banned. But yeah, so that was the end of 2023. Gary Wilson, the last winner. It of course was the last calendar year, or the first calendar year that Neil Robertson didn't win a title since 2006. So that was the end of his chances there. And then that brought us into the Masters in 2024. And, of course, Ronnie started as he left off at the UK Championship, beating Ali Carter in the final 10-7 and completing the second part of the Triple Crown. And again, 7-7, pushed on to win 10-7. And that was a great result for Ronnie. And it was a bit of a grudge match in the end, that one, wasn't it? With Angry Ali.
Not very nice words said by either player afterwards. A bit of a bite to that match. There's a little bit of tension between those two players. I don't think they like each other very much. Which, it's it can't be helped really. I think it's not the best look always for the sport, but also it's inevitable really that there will be some top players who don't like each other, and Ali Carter is a very angry man. So.
He is, yeah, he is, and I think a lot has changed about people's opinions on Ali Carter since of course he got through his cancer diagnosis, and I think people almost feel like, ooh, I can't talk about him in a negative way anymore. But I don't subscribe to that at all. I think Ali Carter was completely out of line actually in the post match interviews about Ronnie, and I don't know how many of those things were true, but it very much came across as sour grapes to me. And it's funny because Ali Carter didn't really do anything for the rest of the season after that. So I think he'd got in his own head about the whole situation. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on all of that.
I just think it was a bit bitter. It was a bad sportsmanship, really, and it was a bit just trying to look for excuses for the fact you've been beaten by a better player, which is never going to look good, whoever it is. But if you're slagging off the greatest player of all time and the most popular player of all time, just what are you possibly hoping to get from this? Like, unless you're hoping to be cast as a villain in the new James Bond, I don't see how it's going to help you.
Oh God, I mean, heaven forbid. But anyway,
you would hate him, mate, as a villain.
I would. But moving on, World Grand Prix, Ronnie beat Judd Trump in the final, 10-7. Another one where he was 7-7, pushed on to win 10-7. Judd Trump then won in the German Masters. Good to see Jarwy get to the final of that one, backing up finally the semi-final run at the Crucible. So it was great to see him back in form. And then, of course, we had the Welsh Open where Judd and Ronnie both withdrew. And people would think it is just the Ronnie O'Sullivan and Judd Trump show this season. Who's going to win it this time? And who goes and does it? But Gary Wilson. But not only that, he was playing Martin O'Donnell in the final. Again, who would have expected the Minister of Defence to be getting to the final of a ranking event this season?
Yeah, first year back on tour for Martin O'Donnell. So he started right at the bottom of the rankings. He, had 0 ranking points. Incredible, really, to see someone like that who's never got to a ranking final. I think he'd only got to maybe one semi-final or something like that. And then he gets to his first ranking final. Of course, he faced Slesser in the semi-final. So, I mean, that was exciting because how rare is it as well that there's a semi-final with two non-previous finalists facing off. So that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And then they're against Gary Wilson, who's not, he's not got a litany of titles. So that was, strangely, because it didn't have any of the big names, that was one of the most exciting tournaments of the year for me, especially the fact that you could, because it is, I think people forget this, but it is a BBC event because you can follow it because it's on BBC Wales, so you can follow it on BBC Sport.
And John Virgo commentates.
JV's there. Dominic Dale does a bit of commentary. There are
Darren Morgan
there. I'm sure Darren Morgan does punditry. I don't know who else does it, but it is fully presented. You can't fully follow it.
It's the teams usually Ken, Darren Morgan, Dominic Dale. John Virgo these days, they tend to get Rhiannon Evans in a little bit as well, and Katrin, who did quite a bit of the World Snooker Championship coverage. She hosts it over on BBC Wales, so it's really good. I think it's a real historic tournament. It's not like the other home nation tournaments that have just been made up to make up the home nations. Welsh Open has been going since the 90s. There's been some real magical moments there over the years. I don't know if you remember when Ronnie made a 147 in the final frame against Ding, and he had that left-handed deep screw with Willie Thorne going, "Go on, White, go on, White." And I just, the Welsh Open for me is a big tournament, so it was a bit disappointing to see some of the big players turn that one down. But maybe it's because it's been made into a bit of a gimmick tournament because it's part of the home nations now.
I feel that they almost under-respected it by just putting it as part of the home nations because, as you said, it's been going, as the Welsh Open since the 90s, and I just looked it up, and it replaced the Welsh Professional Championship that was around in the 80s. So really, there's been like a ranking tournament in Wales since the 80s, and it's such a hotbed of snooker in Wales with Ray Reardon, Mark Williams, all these incredible names. And I think they did a bit of a disservice, really, going, it's the same as these brand new events that have no history and are, not that they shouldn't have, obviously, major events in Scotland and Northern Ireland. But what even does the English Open mean? There's so many ranking events in England already. It feels absurd to pretend that's any different from the British Open, which is also in England. I don't understand.
It's very, very bizarre for me. I agree with the Northern Ireland Open. I agree with the Scottish Open. We need to have events in those areas, but the English Open is a bit of a strange one. And I don't know if you remember the old trophy. It used to be a bit of Welsh slate, and now they've replaced it with a crystal trophy, the Ray Reardon trophy, which is a nice touch, but it's again just takes away from the history of the event a little bit. For me, but well played to Gary Wilson. 2 tournament wins this season, and arguably, player of the season if you discount Judd and Ronnie. But I'm sure we'll get to that at the end of the episode. But then Mark Allen won the Players' Championship 10-8 against Zhang Anda. Another good run for Zhang in that tournament. And then, of course, we had one of the most hilarious moments of the season in the World Masters of Snooker event in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Of course, the 167 was brought about as a gimmick. Nobody knew how it was going to work until that very first frame when the golden ball was on there, except Jasper Carrott, and nobody told Jack Lazowski the dress code either, did they?
It was hilarious. I didn't even really watch too much of the tournament. For all the hype and the controversy, it was very hard to actually watch it. I think it was behind either a paywall or it was on...
I think it was on Eurosport, but...
Yeah, so really, there was all this sort of talk and hype, but it probably got less viewers than the Welsh Open that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
So a bit of a weird tournament, really. The main memory for me, obviously, is Jack Lazowski wearing that outfit. I'm always going to remember him as the ambassador for Saudi Arabian snooker.
I just find it hilarious, and maybe we'll have to, one day get Jack on the podcast and just ask him, look, was it a wind-up? Was it a wind? Had somebody told you that that's what you needed to wear, or was it you just being respectful to the Saudi culture?
Or did Judd bet that you wouldn't do it?
I mean, it's a sort of thing. Honestly, it just hilarious. Just the image of him stood there, Ken Doherty next to him in a suit, and John Higgins came up after once he'd won his match, and you could tell he just couldn't keep a straight face. He was like, "What on earth is this guy wearing?" I didn't even realise that was Jack Lazowski. I just thought it was some random Saudi guy that had popped up on the coverage, but. I mean, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So well played, Jack Lazowski. A true Snooker Loopy moment, I think, that. I loved it. He
wasn't even in the tournament. He wasn't even playing.
Yeah, I know. But Ronnie, of course, won that tournament 5-2 against Luca Brissell. There was only one chance of a 1-6-7, and it was John Higgins, and he got all the way to the yellow. And it was carnage. There was people getting up, making cups of tea while they were going round. It would have been quite a farce had he made a 1-6-7, and that video of just people wandering around in the background and whatever in this real historic snooker moment. So I'm glad it didn't happen. But they have promised, Tom, for next year, a £1 million bonus to anybody that can make a 1-6-7.
I would love that to go to a completely random player. Like, imagine if someone like Rod Lawler got that.
Well, I don't. Funnily enough, don't think he'll be invited to play in that tournament. But
He should be. He'd be the first name on my list, Joe. He'd be the first one up there.
He does a Zhang Anda this season and wins a couple of tournaments, gets himself into the top 8. But yeah, it was an interesting tournament. I'm looking forward to seeing it again next season, hopefully without all of the controversy around it. And I think it's an interesting event, a little bit like the Shootout. I do think there are places on the calendar for these gimmicky events where you have a golden ball, or if you play Snooker Plus. How awesome would that be if they had a Snooker Plus tournament? I think it would just be really good. And it's nice to see that they're trying different things, and that's my viewpoint on it anyway. But then we had the Championship League. Go on, do you want to say any more about it?
Well, I was just going to especially say, because the two controversies, big ones this year, have been they've got a tournament in Saudi Arabia and there's a golden ball and there's a lot of money. And the other controversy was the Crucible might move.
Yeah.
And I think pretty much every snooker fan would say, right, we're fine. Have your golden ball, have your Saudi Arabian tournament, but leave the Crucible.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think looking back on the season, it's gone from people going, no Saudi Arabia, don't go there at all, blah blah blah. But now people are going, no, actually fine. If you want that, have your own tournament. Do whatever you want over there. Absolutely fine. Have your tournament. Have the big money. Have Jack Lazowski dressed up for no reason. You do that, mate. Absolutely fine. But leave the Crucible where it is.
Absolutely.
Or get Jack Lazowski to dress up as the Crucible in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, God. I'd hate to see what that would look like, actually. How would you dress up as the Crucible? I mean, what? You'd have to just... I guess you'd have to wear... red shoes, brown trousers for the seats, and then you'd have to wear Dennis Taylor glasses, have a ginger wig for Steve Davis, and wear a green baize top.
Well, Sean Murphy's going to get one of them made for next year, so...
Yeah. Well, there you go. But... moving on from Saudi, we went to the Invitational event of the Champions League, or Championship League, I should say. And interestingly, in the final, Mark Selby beat Joe O'Connor 3-1. Obviously, more on that in a little bit. World Open returned to the calendar this year. Judd Trump beating Ding Junhui in the final. I know Neil Robertson did fairly well in that event, but didn't quite do enough to get himself into the Crucible, and then, of course, didn't qualify. Then we had the World Mixed Doubles in Manchester. Luca Brissell and Rhian Evans beating Mark Selby and Rebecca Kenner. I know Mark Allen pulled out at the last minute of that tournament. I wonder why. And then we had the Tour Championship, which, of course, I attended this year, and we had incredible drama actually, and it started all the way in the first round. I don't know if you remember, but Mark Williams was 9-all against Tom Ford, and he was something like 55 points behind, and all the reds were on the cushion. It looked impossible. He knocks a red in, and he manages to clear the table, winning 10-9 in the first round, and hey, he went on to win the tournament. Unbelievable.
I don't know if we're going to do a thing about result of the season or something like that, but that was probably up there for one of my best results, just because obviously we love Ronnie, we love seeing him win more ranking titles, but I think I read something like it was the first time Mark had beat Ronnie in a ranking final for about 20 odd years, and like for Mark Williams to still prove he's got it and still prove he can win a ranking title, I think it's just such a wonderful thing for the sport, because everyone loves Mark. He's one of the great personalities. He is one of the best players of all time, and he'll always deny it because that's Mark Williams. But it's just something kind of special about seeing him, especially considering his career hasn't been at the top the whole way. He has dropped out the top 16, but he's had this sort of flourish over the past, probably 10 years or so now, almost relatively. And it's great to see him, that he can beat Ronnie in the final. I think was a fantastic moment, really, because most people didn't give him a chance against Ronnie because of their previous record, regardless of how good Mark is. But the way he played in that final was one of the best sort of final performances I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. From 5-3 down. He was 3-1 up. Ronnie won 4 frames in 37 minutes, and then Mark Williams just was unbeatable after that. And it was incredible to watch, and a privilege to be there live as well. And good to see him back winning the really big tournaments, because it had been a while. He obviously won the British Open earlier that year, but I know Mark Williams has had a lot of heartbreaking defeats in the last few years, in the semi-finals. He obviously had that one against Neil Robertson a few years ago, which was unbelievable. And I think he'd maybe started doubting himself. And I think, as you say, it was good for him to have some belief, show that he's still got it. And hopefully we'll have that for plenty of time to come. But before we talk about the World Championship, just a little mention of some of the other tournaments promoted by World Snooker. Obviously, we've got the Women's Tour. Bai Yulu won the World Women's Championship 6-5 against Mink in the final. That was a big result for her. I know Rhiannon Evans won a tournament at the UK Championship, and Nguyen Yi won 2 events on the World's Women's Tour as well. Q Tour, Michael Holt won his tour card back. Obviously, former professional, he won quite a few events on the Q Tour this season, as did Peter Lyons, which was nice to see. And the World Seniors, which obviously took place after the World Championship, but I think it's right to talk about that now. We love the World Seniors, me and Tom, and we were delighted to see.
We need to go one year.
We need to go one year, yeah. But we were delighted to see it was on Channel 5 this year. Little did we know it would be put on one of Channel 5's obscure channels, 5 Action, which I didn't even know existed. But, at the final, the semi-final and final were on Channel 5. I know it was great. I mean, Joe Johnson pulled off one of the shots of the tournament. I don't know if you've seen that Tom, with the little jab into the middle. That was great. Tony Knowles was playing there, but I have to say, one of my absolute highlights of the year is seeing Tony Drago play. And it's the second year in a row now he's played at the World Championship. And I just watch him and I think, wow, what an unbelievable talent.
That man could still be. I wish he was still on tour.
Yeah.
He's still got it. I think it's a real shame they never gave him an invitational tour card, because, they speak about players from overseas. They always talk about James Wattener, who was also at the World Seniors. But Tony Drago's also one of those players who really, I don't think there's many players from outside the UK who have had as much of an impact as he has, really.
Especially because of his speed, around the table.
Yeah. Well, he's still got that real speed. He still can knock in proper breaks. And yeah, it's great to see him, and it's great to see how much he cared about winning. Like, he clearly, it meant a lot to him to be there, to be playing, to be winning. There's a good bit when he fell off his chair. Did you see that moment?
I was worried that he'd fallen and died, and I mean, John Virgo went, oh dear, hang on. But it was quite funny that he did fall off his chair, but it was just so
Where's
Tony
Drago going?
Where's he gone? It just had to be Tony Drago that fell off his chair. But big shock, wasn't it, that Jimmy White went out in the quarterfinals, and it was very, very quiet from Jimmy White. You know, a lot of the players stay about and do commentary and, you know, get involved in punditry, but Jimmy White ended off a very, very poor season in general for him. The fact that he was knocked out of the World Seniors in the quarterfinal.
Absolutely. I think he'll at least take some comfort from the fact he was beaten by the winner.
Yeah.
You know, Igor Figueiredo,
Yeah.
went on to beat Tony Drago and then beat Ken Doherty.
Crafty Ken, yeah.
Pretty comfortably. He knocked in, I think, 2 or 3 centuries. He looked like he was in really good touch and deserved to win the championship. Again, he's one who they said in the interview afterwards that basically the reason he's not on tour is because he couldn't get the funding, and he's from Brazil, so he can't really afford to stay on tour, and he needs a sponsor. So I would love to see somehow him get one and then give him a wild card or something like that, because he's got the game. And, you know, frankly, there's been a few players from Brazil on tour recently who don't do much, but he clearly can. He could clearly be close to the top 64, I reckon, on his day. It was gutting for Ken, though. Of course, we wanted Ken to win. We wanted for Ken.
Oh, he just seems so cursed in the World Seniors, doesn't he? Of course, a few years ago, he was 4-0 up in the final, best of 9. 4-0 up against Jimmy White, and he lost 5-4. And yeah, I just gutted for Ken. I really am, because I think he really wants to win it. He really wants to win it, and he's almost becoming the Jimmy White of the World Seniors, what he was at the World Championship, isn't he?
Well, he is, to be honest. He really, really is. And, you know, Ken played well. He beat fan favourite Dechuat Poomjang.
Oh, yeah, of course, Dechuat. I mean, coming out with those glasses on. I mean, what a guy, Dechuat Poomjang. And he applauded his opponent. I can't remember who he was playing now in the first round, but it was Darren Morgan. Darren Morgan had cleared the table brilliantly. It was a brilliant clearance, and Dechuat Poomjang sat in his chair applauding him, and I'm just like, wow, what a guy he is. And the Thai sausage there, doing wonders.
He had his sunglasses, and he had another pair of shades on his head as well.
He's just, crack. And I have to say, there was some real good characters in this tournament. And, some notable absentees. Obviously, no Stephen Hendry this year, which was a big surprise for me, him not playing in the seniors. And obviously, Dennis hasn't played in the last few editions of it, which is a shame. But did you see the controversy of Mark Allen tweeting about the tournament?
Oh, was this when I think Michael Jones did a shot and it bounced out of the pocket because there was a bit of wood in the pocket, and Mark Allen tweeted going, "Best tournament of the season" or something like that. That's as much as I saw. Was there more after that?
There was more. I think the Jason Francis, the guy that runs it, was tweeting Mark Allen, and Mark Allen was very disgruntled about how players are invited to it, and it's a very exclusive club of players that are invited to it. I mean, there's lots of different viewpoints on it. I think the likes of Joe Johnson get automatic qualification, which I think is completely right, in my opinion, because nobody wants, with all due respect, nobody wants to go and see a tournament of 16 Rodney Goggins and Stuart Watsons
I want to see the Rodney Goggins Invitational.
but ultimately people are going there to see the big names like Ken or Jimmy White or Darren Morgan or Barry Pinches or Joe Johnson. or Dennis, or Cliff. They'd love to see those players playing. That ultimately, in my opinion.
Is Mark Allen even old enough?
Oh, Mark Allen's not old enough. No. But I think I think
Why
he's
does he care?
yeah. I don't know what.
He's world number one. Why does he care about the World Seniors?
I don't really know why he cares, but apparently he does. And yeah, it caused a bit of a outrage online. But no, I really enjoyed the seniors. I thought it was great and good to see Igor Figueiredo win it. Obviously, a player that has been around a long time. We've known of him for a long time, but good to see him get his name on a tournament and get a little bit more recognition. I hope it has a bit of a similar effect to how when David Lilley won it a few years ago. So good luck to him
as well for South American snooker.
Yeah,
obviously, kind of a pretty much apart from him as a player, I don't think there's been any other player on tour who's ever really done anything from that area. So it could be massive for Brazil and just South America in general that they've got a world champion. That's crazy.
Absolutely. But to finish off our review of the season, of course, we can't talk about this season without talking about the World Championship and some incredible moments in that World Championship. But if you want to hear our in-depth thoughts about it, then you can go and check out our previous video, which was our big World Snooker Championship 2024 roundup. But of course...
Can you imagine if we just talked about it again for another 2 hours?
Well, yes, exactly. But of course, big shocks along the way. Luca Bracel not breaking the Crucible curse, but ultimately it ended up with Kyron Wilson winning his first world title, and it was his first title of the season. In fact, his first final of the season. And Jack Jones, of course, the first final of his career. And it was an incredible final looking back at it. And Kyron Wilson got over the line and gets our first world title under his belt. He's now got the same amount of world titles as Judd Trump, Stuart Bingham, Graham Dott, Peter Ebdon, Ken Doherty, legends of the game. And Dennis Taylor, yeah. And Kyron Wilson is right up there with them now with his world title. But do you have any final thoughts about the winners and losers of this year's World Championship before I ask you some more trivia questions?
Just that it was a fantastic World Championship and season really for Kyron. I think it's that thing where as soon as you win the World Championship, that defines your season. And so, strangely, this is probably his biggest ever season in terms of prize money, just based on one tournament, because that's how stacked it is as a tournament. But great to see him win it. It's nice, actually, and important for the sport that we had 2 younger players in the final, I think, looking back. There's so many different players who could have been in the final. We could have had, 2 players in their mid-40s playing each other if it was Ronnie and
Dominic Dale.
Or whatever. Or Dominic Dale.
Yeah.
He's 53, mate.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
If he got to the final, I think people wouldn't talk about Chris Henry. They'd be talking about Dominic Dale's new girlfriend as the wonder coach. Right,
okay. Yeah, I was thinking about, they wouldn't be talking about Chris Henry's balls, they'd be talking about something else. But yeah, I mean,
Dale's balls?
Great season, yeah. Great season, and great to see Kyron Wilson. We're keeping that in there. Great to see Kyron Wilson win his first world title. It would have also been true to say it would have been great to see Dominic Dale win his first world title, but I'm not sure that that's happening again. But you might be aware, Tom, that earlier this season we had the 200th ever 147. We've now had 202 147s, Noppon Sangham making one in the World Championship, of course. So I had a little bit of a thought of a little quiz for you before we hopefully cue the music and cue the laughter. I don't know, Tom. I don't know if you've got stuff prepared. Maybe I'm putting you on the spot here. But I want to ask you, who got the first ever 147, official 147 in snooker?
I mean, my head goes to Cliff Thorburn, but I think that's the first one at the Crucible. So, what's the first ever one? Steve Davis?
It was Steve Davis, yeah. Do you know what tournament it was in?
One of the old ones. Do you know what I mean? One of the ones in the past. Probably the I don't know, the 1979 Masters.
No, it wasn't. It was the Larder Classic. And of course, he won a Larder for winning, for getting the 147.
Did he really?
Yeah, which I think he gave to his mum or something like that. I seem to remember a story like that. Cliff Thorburn, interestingly, got the second ever 147 in 1983 at the Embassy World Championship. It was 1982 for Steve Davis, and Kirk Stevens got the third ever 147 in 1984. That very famous 147 in the Masters. That was the third ever. Can you believe it? I'm very surprised by that. Other notable mentions, the 10th 147 for you, Tom, was Peter Ebden at the Strachan Professional in 1991. And the 47th, because obviously, 47 is a interesting number for snooker, was John Higgins at the LG Cup in 2003. He actually made 3 147s in a row. He made the 47th, the 48th, and the 49th 147s. And one of them being against Ricky Walden, who I seen on this list a whole bunch of times. He's had, I think, 5 147s made against him in his career. Now, I don't know if that's the record, but it's certainly got to be close to the record. Oh, Mark Selby's had 8 against him, apparently, so there you go.
Wow.
That's a lot. Surely that's not right. I think it must be, unless it's also counting the ones he. No. He's had 8 147s against him. The 50th 147, interestingly, wasn't John Higgins. It was David Gray at the UK Championship in 2004, and that was against Mark Selby. That was the first one Mark Selby had against him. But can you tell me the 100th 147 that was made?
Oh, I would have known David Gray, funnily enough.
Would you? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. I would have known that. We'll edit it in. And Joe goes, oh, what's the 50th one? And I go, David Gray. Correct. There we go. Brilliant. But the 100th one, do I get a clue of the year?
So it was in 2013. It was against Ricky Walden, interestingly, at the UK Championship. And I remember Dennis Taylor, the last black was a black to the middle pocket. And Dennis was going, get in there, get in there. And I remember distinctly that year, right? Because we watched it live. Me and my mum watched it live. And then later in the tournament, they obviously replayed it. And she was asleep on the sofa because, she often did have a nap while the snooker was on. And obviously that Dennis Taylor shouting again, she sort of woke up and she went, no, another one, surely.
Here we go. Get in! Get in! Get in!
I mean, isn't that the best way of being woken up, with Dennis Taylor going, get in there, get in there? Like, that should be in the alarm clock, frankly.
Yeah. Get in there, get in there! Yeah.
Does your mum, has she got an alarm on her mobile phone, and can we change it to Dennis shouting, get in there, get in there?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'd be welcome back if I did that. So, yeah, probably not the best idea. But I think, Tom, you're deflecting the main question here. Who was it?
I think the person that Dennis wanted to get in there was John Higgins.
No, it was Mark Selby, I'm afraid, Tom. Mark Selby.
I was close. I was so close.
Yeah, you were. The 101st, interestingly, was by a guy that we were talking about from the World Seniors.
Detchawat?
It was Detchawat, yes, at the German Masters. Very, very good. And then the next, the next biggest 147 was the 147th 147. And I know there was a lot of publicity about this, so I'm hopeful, Tom, that you might get this one.
I believe it was anything but faithless David Gilbert.
It was, yes, in the Championship League against Stephen Maguire back in 2019. And then, of course, the final one, the final big one, was the 200th 147. Do you remember who that was by? It was earlier this season. It was against Elliot Slessor in the Championship League in 2024.
I don't think it's Sean O'Sullivan, but I got him in my head because I think he had one around that number. I think 200 was Joe O'Connor.
It was Joe O'Connor, yeah. I believe Sean O'Sullivan got the 190th.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, there was quite a few in between then.
Well, he was the first O'Sullivan who's not runny to get a 147.
Yeah. And who has the most 147s, and do you know how many?
Ronnie O'Sullivan, 15.
Yes, correct.
Ron
And
Higgins, 13.
He has 13, yeah.
Stephen Hendry, 12.
Yeah, well done.
Stuart Bingham, 9.
I don't know. I don't know after that. I haven't got a list of who's made the most, but yeah.
Joe Hannard, 8, brackets in video games.
Yeah, I must have had a few, mustn't I? But
you must have a record of how many you've made.
Well, I think I put a video for every 147 I made on Snooker 19 at least, but I've definitely made one in 05, definitely made one in 07, must have made multiple in 09, so surely I've got nearly 15. And of course I nearly made a 147 in my very first frame online in Snooker 19. I don't know if you remember, there was a video where I got really, really close. I think I missed the yellow, actually. But yeah, that was an interesting memory. But there's only been one official break over 147. Do you know who it was? And what the break was?
I'm just racking through my head. I know Jamie Cope made a 155 in practice, but I don't think that wasn't official, right?
No, that's not official. But he did, yeah.
I believe it was Jamie Burnett, and it was a 148.
Very good. Very good. Jamie Burnett, 148 against Leo Fernandez in the 2004 UK Championship. Fantastic.
Leo Fernandez is my rival because in World Snooker 2005, I was playing a one-frame match and he made a 147 against me, and I was so annoyed that I looked him up on Wikipedia, and he's never made a 147, but he did against me in the video game. Explain
yes,
that,
he did.
Leo.
Yeah. I just remember, I mean, that game was so frustrating because so many times you'd snooker Higgins or Williams, and they'd be the two, and they'd come off the side cushion, bust into the reds. The red would go in, and they'd clear up every single time. Very frustrating. But I do remember World Championship semi-final in my playthrough of that. I played Matthew Stevens, and it was 16-16 in the semi-final, and I think Stevens was 34 up with 35 on the table, was about to pot the black, and he missed it. It drawed in the pocket, and then Hannard made the clearance, and yeah, the rest is history. I think Mark Williams did actually make a 147 in that final as well. He did beat me over 35 frames, but that might have been the series where you found my channel, Tom. I don't know.
I believe it was. I believe the whole reason me and Joe became friends is because Joe was doing a Let's Play of World Snooker 2005, and I saw it on YouTube, and I don't think anyone else has really done Let's Plays on snooker before then. I think now people might have done because of Snooker 19, but I watched that and I was like, oh, this guy seems very nice and very funny and interesting, and he likes snooker, and he's not as obnoxious as most YouTubers, which was good.
Thanks.
And
Not as
chatting in the
obnoxious.
comments.
Still obnoxious, but not as obnoxious.
Slightly. I mean, he's obnoxious enough to remember his breaks against Matthew Stevens in a video game. Do you know what I mean? So slightly obnoxious.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
But yeah, we're both, now we're very good friends, and all because of a video game that's almost 20 years old. I'm really hoping they do a Snooker 25, because I feel we need one for the 40th year of the World Championship final, for the 20th year since that classic game. We need another one next year.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we can turn this podcast into a campaign for a new snooker game, but yeah, I don't see it happening. I hope I'm wrong. I didn't see a new topspin coming out, to be fair, and that came out, so I can't lie. It could happen, but I don't see it happening. And the amount I've tried to ask questions of the developers, I just don't hear anything back anymore. So yeah, I don't know, but fingers crossed it will happen. But before we finish off our season review with our regular features, I want to ask you, Tom, what is your top moment of the season? What's your favourite moment from the past 9-10 months? You can give more than one if it's easier.
Well, my favourite match would probably be the Mark Williams-Ronnie final, where they both played excellently, but Williams just played so incredibly well, and it was just an amazing performance. That's going to be the match that sticks in my memory, I think. My favourite moment would probably be... what would be my favourite moment? I mean, strangely, just because it's tied in so much with this podcast and the silliness of it, it's probably the Lincolnshire sausage at the shootout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that felt like it was a fever dream when I was watching it. I couldn't quite believe it, and that was just such a silly, weird moment, but it was lovely for that reason, and that's why I think a lot of people love the shootout, and that's what is missing from snooker, is the genuine silliness and lightness, and that kind of captured it. Like, someone who's happy to come out being called a sausage and still can... And it reached the semi-finals of a ranking tournament. So I'm just saying, if you call yourself sausage, you seem to do very well. So that was probably my favourite moment.
Yeah, no, very, very good moments. I think I've got a few. I mean, Murphy's 147 in the shootout, that was good, but I didn't catch it live, so that takes something away from it. I think Ronnie winning two of the three Triple Crown events, the UK and the Masters, they were special moments. Obviously, being in the arena for Mark Williams versus Judd Trump. Mark Williams versus Ronnie O'Sullivan. I'm thinking about the World Championship when I watched Judd Trump. Seeing how well Mark Williams was playing and how much it meant to him. But I have to say, my memory of the season, it could be recency bias, but that clearance from John Higgins in the World Championship against Mark Allen, I honestly don't think I'll ever forget that in terms of how I felt watching that. That was I've not felt like that before watching snooker. So that was a real special moment for me.
And for John Higgins, you could tell by
and
his
for John Higgins,
how special it was. That real kind of, it felt like he was Gladiator or something,
Yeah, there we go. There's me cue, me pink cue. There we go.
That was the closest Higgins got to the cue, really, wasn't it? That iconic thing, really. It was great to see. Yeah,
and I just think there's such a beautiful symmetry of the classic clearance from Alex Higgins in '82 and John Higgins in 24. I just think that's beautiful in a way. But yeah, certainly won't forget that in a hurry. And if John Higgins doesn't achieve anything else in the game, that'll be a really special moment that we'll be able to cherish for forever. And well played. But there has been some great moments, and I'm sure there's plenty of moments that we've forgotten about, to be honest with you, Tom. So please do let us know down in the comment section or on Twitter or on the Snooker Loopy podcast at gmail.com. Please let us know your favourite moments of the season, and, you know, are there any that we're forgetting, or is there any that you think we're overrating, underrating? Do let us know and get in touch.
Beautiful. Of course, Joe, it's not just the snooker season we're talking about. We've also got our regular features. So, shall we cue the music?
Let's cue the music, Tom.
Today's cue the music. I started the podcast with kind of a Eurovision introduction, and I was trying to think if we could do like a snooker Eurovision, but the sad thing is, there's not enough players from different European countries on tour. Like, literally, you'd have Lucas Kleckers, you'd have Ken representing Ireland, but I mean, Scotland's not in Eurovision, Wales isn't in Eurovision, China's not in Eurovision, so it'd be a much smaller singing competition, sadly, if we did a snooker Eurovision. So we can't do that yet. But I thought, well, what we could do, Joe, I do have in the can, this is the last memo. It is a song by a player from Switzerland.
Hey, is it Roger Federer?
It is Roger Federer, of course. Well, it's the Roger Federer of snooker. It's the Federer of the bass. It's Alexander Ersenbecker.
Fantastic.
And Switzerland won Eurovision. So
they did, of course.
A nice bit of symmetry here that we've got our own possible future winner of the Snooker Loopy Cue the Music section. Who knows? It could win. We'll have to see what the jury votes gives it after we listen.
Yes.
But we have Alexander Ersenbecker, so I'll pop the link over to you there, Joe.
Snooker Loopy, not so we, me and him and them and me. We'll show you what we can do with a load of balls and a snooker cue. Pop the red stand, screw back for the yellow, green, brown, blue, pink and black. Snooker Loopy, not so we, we're all Snooker Loopy.
You know what, Tom? I love the fact he didn't say a single other word other than the lyrics of the song. He didn't say hello. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say thank you. He just sung it.
That's what they say about the Federer of the Bays. He just does what he's told. That's it.
Yeah.
He sticks to the brief. He doesn't do anything else. He goes, "You want these lyrics? Here you go." But he got the melody spot on. He had the right. It wasn't like some of the other ones where they've just rushed through it. He was committed.
Well, it wasn't a Ken Doherty, was it?
No, he was committed to just singing the chorus.
Yeah.
While looking into the camera with a light switch behind him.
Yeah, the light switch behind him was interesting, wasn't it? And you know, the echo in the room. I've just got this, you know, image of his girlfriend watching him in disapproval at the fact that he's singing Snooker Loopy. But you know, thank you very much, Alex, for sending that one in. I'm not sure you had much choice in the matter. I think Tom's been pestering you for a while, but thank you very much.
How many points at Eurovision would you give that, Joe?
Well, there is the possibility, Tom, now, if we're going Eurovision rules here, Alex Ersenbecker could end up topping the whole list here if we go 12 and 12. But for me, I'm not sure it would be a hit with the televote.
I mean, the thing with Eurovision is you need really good, impressive visuals. I don't think he quite nailed it. With
No.
literally just a selfie shot of him.
Yeah, I don't think he broke the code with this one, did he?
Hey.
I think for me, it's got to be a 5. I think for me, a 5.
Okay, fair enough. I'd give him a 6. I enjoyed it. He nailed the melody.
He did.
Appreciate the fact he did it without complaining. He didn't say it's not really my thing. He was happy to do it. Appreciated that. Thank you, Alexander Ersenbacher.
Yes, thank you, Hazel.
I mean, ideally, he would have been like the Eurovision entry from Switzerland and been on some sort of spinning dish while he did it. That would have been nice, but...
Yeah, it would have been a nice touch, that. It puts him level low with Catch the Pigeon by Ken Doherty. So I'm sure he'll be thrilled about that. Puts him into 30th place in our snooker in our rankings. I feel so bad now. And you know what? I'm going to bump him up half a point because I loved.
This is unheard of.
I loved his his eye popping towards the end. I don't know if you noticed it, Tom, but he sort of went Snooker Loopy.
And if you want to say that eye pop in, of course, as a reminder to the audio listeners, we do have a video version of this on our YouTube channel. You can see Ersenbacher's eye popping and also Joe's impression of Ersenbacher's eye popping, which
yes,
very exciting stuff.
We might have to do a whole podcast like that sometime, Tom, and just read maybe our Halloween special. But yeah, that now puts him level with Ken Doherty's Snooker Loopy, which I think is fair. I think, although it was a better performance than Ken, he doesn't quite have the charisma of a Ken Doherty to get him up any higher for me.
To be fair to him, though, I did enjoy that song more than some of the actual Eurovision songs this year, so he's got that going for him.
Oh, do tell, Tom. Do tell.
Just, Portugal. Rubbish, mate.
Yeah, what were we doing giving 12 points to Portugal?
I didn't get it. I was like, what? Have I watched the wrong show? I didn't understand it. Completely nonsense.
I mean, yeah, unbelievable. I mean, we'll probably have to do a spin-off podcast about Eurovision next year, Tom. Funnily enough, right, years and years ago, I used to do a Twitter commentary of Eurovision.
Really?
Years and years ago, yeah. Probably, 2012, 2013, 14, I think I did. It was with one of my friends at school, and we used to alternate on songs and give our thoughts of where it would come.
I love that, mate. That's fantastic.
But yeah, so but yeah, there you go. A little bit of a knick-knack for you. So for one of our other features, Tom, have you got a Cue the Laughter?
I do, Joe. I have two options for you. One option is an eBay listing that I almost bidded on, but it's ended. The other option is an eBay listing that is currently active, and I think you might bid on this.
Oh, God. Let's go for the one that I might buy. Oh, my God. I'm a little bit worried about this.
This is time for our regular subsection. Tom makes Joe buy things, and I've sent the link to you there, Joe.
Oh dear, right. Okay, so I am going to get this up for people on the YouTube side of things. So here we are. They're going to see similar items as well. This is a snooker player ceramic figurine. Height 9 inches, apparently. And I'm assuming it is meant to be Steve Davis. But I'm not entirely sure. I mean, what does it say at the bottom there? Snooker player.
Yeah, it's everyone's favourite player, snooker player.
Oh, we've got a good picture of his behind as well.
Beautiful.
Let's pop that into full screen so people can really appreciate the sights of the. Oh, we've got one of him falling over as well. Oh, is that BJ Bond? Is that what that says?
Possibly.
SJ Bond? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can't quite make it out. And
I can't work out the first initial. It's either an S or a B.
But it says 1986, so I imagine this is Steve Davis. I don't know how much of what it looks like is down to condition or whether they all look like this, but I can't find anything about it. But if you zoom
Well,
in
it's clearly
on
not
his,
official, but
if you zoom in on his crotch, I think that is Steve Davis. I recognise that anywhere.
well, I've already zoomed in on his behind, so it's not much of a step.
But it is the closest thing I've found, Joe, to the Stephen Hendry action figure. That is not the Stephen Hendry action figure, but it is a ceramic thing, so it's not a toy, I'm afraid. You won't be able to play with this. You can't take it to school and fly around with your Steve Davis action figure.
Yeah.
You can't be doing that.
I mean, I imagine, Tom, that it would get broke in the post if I was to buy that. So I'm not actually going to buy it for once, Tom. You've not persuaded me to buy that one.
Just because it would get broken in the post.
I think so. I think it would. What does the description say?
Let's go down to the description.
Story time with Tom. I'm going to go into the Tom solo cam.
What? News? What's it on about the news? What? I'm utterly baffled by this description, but it says news for display purposes only, no chips or cracks. I've seen a lovely crack on his behind.
There's
there. Thank you very much.
definitely a crack there. It's a cracker.
I mean, yeah. It's in Oldbury. Where's Oldbury? Do we know?
I don't know where Oldbury is. I assume it's probably nowhere near Newbury, but yeah, I don't know where it is, Tom.
It's West Midlands. Could you drive there, Joe, to pick this up?
No. I'm sorry, Tom.
Oh, well, if anyone else wants to buy that...
You've got a few days on eBay.
You've got a few days to buy that as a present for Joe and for us to see whether Steve Davis's head will break off in the post.
Yeah.
You could replace it with the Stephen Hendry head. You could mix and match.
Yeah. An unofficial Steve Davis head breaks off. Yes. Breaks off. Hey, there you go. Snooker themed. Hey. Very good. But that's a cracker, Tom.
I can't really read who's made it, so I can't find anything else about it. I don't know whether there was a set of them. I don't know whether there's a Dennis Taylor one somewhere or a Joe Johnson one somewhere.
There could be. There could well be.
No idea, but I just saw it and just thought...
You thought of me, Tom. You thought of me.
I thought of you. I thought, you've got your lovely action figures behind you, and I thought, I could see Steve Davis there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, not this time. Not this time, Hazel. Not this time.
Gutting.
But there we have it. That's the end of our season review, Tom, and we will be previewing the start of the next season. I think officially it's the last tournament of 23-24, but I'm counting it as the start of 24-25. Q School coming up next week, Tom. We will be doing our preview video, and as always, we will be picking teams based on a variety of factors of how much we like them as a pro and how much we like their name.
They're the main two factors, really. And it's extra exciting this year because Q School's actually being streamed on YouTube on the WST channel. So we'd be able to follow Andy Neck and cheer him on if he's one of the names. I don't know if he is, but...
Well, if he gets onto table one, then he must be doing very, very well. So fingers crossed. Do you think Dave Hendon is going to be commentating on it?
I'm going to say yes, whether he's paid to or not. I think even if he's not commentating on the official stream, I imagine he'll just watch it at home and just be talking like he's commentating.
Yeah. I do wonder if he does that when he's watching snooker, whether he just commentates along.
Definitely does. Do you think if he just goes down to the club and just commentates on just random players?
Probably. I mean, maybe he's not even employed by Eurosport. Perhaps he just turns up and sits in the commentary box. But
I think you should invite him to Hazel Grove.
Hazel Grove. Yeah. But there you have it. There you have it, Tom. Really, want to say again, thank you very much for the support on the new channel, and hopefully you like some of the other content on there. Obviously, we uploaded the rap from K-Dot, who we're hoping to speak to very soon as well, Tom. bring him on the podcast. And I've also uploaded the first episode of Pot Quiz from the recent World Championship. I know a few people were really appreciative of that. We have got the other 6 episodes of that, and then I've put together an 8th episode with all of them in one. So hopefully a bit to keep you occupied over the snooker drought over the next few months, because, as I say, the proper snooker season doesn't start until the Champion of Champions, Tom, and I won't have it any other way.
That's pretty much half the year away, but I mean, we do know, of course, we already know a few of the names. We know it's going to be Karen Wilson, we're going to have Mark Allen, Igor Figueiredo, of course, he's going to be there for the first time. That's exciting.
Yeah, very excited to see Igor there, and it would have been so good to have Tony Drago there, but never mind, maybe next year. But 2 events you're going to next season. You're going to the Crucible and the Masters.
I am.
Getting out there.
Not only this, Joe, but something literally I'll see if I can get this up on my Facebook, because Liv, who was on the podcast and people will know as my partner, sent me a message very excited literally yesterday about an event that is coming up in Basingstoke, which is where we live. It's local to our this abode, so I will get this up for you, Joe, and while the internet's loading, we might have to edit it slightly, but
well, while you're looking for that, Tom, I'll just read out another message that we've had from Chris Reed on the Snooker Loopy podcast at gmail.com. He's a big fan of the podcast, and though your content over the World Championship, or thought our content was really excellent, and he has, spoiler alert, recorded himself singing Snooker Loopy, so that will be a future cue the music for us.
Yes, please.
And
I will never tire of them.
There's a comment here. The Geordie is put on, so don't judge me too hard. Hope you enjoy, Chris Reed. So thank you very much, Chris Reed, for getting in touch. And Aidan Bell did get in touch again, and has put a load of links for some Joe Johnson music. Some of the ones that we do know about, some of them that might be new, and that again will be a future Cue the Music little episode. So thank you very much for getting in touch, and if you want to get in touch too, then please do let me know, or let us know your thoughts at that email address.
I don't know how clear this will be, Joe, but this is what is happening in Basingstoke.
I'm going to put you on solo cam.
This is literally about 5 minutes from where I'm recording this right now in October, and hopefully you'll be able to see. Can you see that?
Oh, wow. An evening with snooker greats Stephen Hendry and Mark Williams, hosted by Good Evening Hazel.
Hosted by Good Evening Hazel himself. And there is a VIP ticket that gets me a pre-show meet and greet and a professional photo with the players.
So you can ask Stephen Hendry, why won't he sing Snooker Loopy for the Snooker Loopy podcast?
I will definitely ask him.
Thank you.
And I'll try and get Mark Williams.
Oh, that would be awesome. He would do it. I reckon he will do it.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think he would.
I am less hopeful, but we'll see.
Fair enough. But no, you got anything else you want to say, Tom, before we wrap up?
That's it. If people just let us know, again, as we said earlier, your highlights below. And if there's any other if there's anything you want us to talk about in the break, because, me and Joe have a million ideas and we have loads of different stuff we can talk about. But what I love is that we now have a community of people who are interacting. And so if any of you guys kind of want to go, hey, have you seen this weird snooker game show from 1968 or whatever it is, something random, or have you ever watched this match or this frame, anything like that, feel free to suggest it. We might ignore it, to be honest, but
because Tom never looks at the emails. I look at the emails. Tom doesn't.
Joe looks at the emails. I look at all the comments on YouTube. I don't see the emails. That's Joe's department as far as I'm concerned. But let us know if there's anything you want to talk about. Let us know your highlights, your key moments of the season. And let us know, what did you think of Alexander Ursenbacher's singing? And please do go on eBay and have a bidding war to get that figure and send it to Joe. Even if... Can you imagine if it goes up? It's only a tenner at the moment. Can you imagine if it ends up being like 200 quid or something?
Or 1470, maybe? Who knows?
I'm genuinely... I think even with us talking about it on the podcast, it still just won't sell. I just can't see.
Well, if you haven't bought it, Tom, then nobody will. So, yeah.
I think that's true of most snooker things that me and you have bought over the past few years.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
But yes, absolute pleasure. We'll see you all very soon for the Q School preview. And look after yourselves. And yeah, take care.